While two fleets bled each other blind in the far south, a second war was being fought in total silence, and almost no one in the Union knew it had begun. It carried no guns and launched no swarms. Its whole arsenal was a quiet station at the cold edge of the long calm, a ring of vast antenna fans turned outward, drinking the enemy's own voice out of the dark. The Vharen fought as one flawless machine, and to move as one, a machine has to talk. Every order, every schedule, every turn of course ran as a constant traffic of coded signal between its ships. In that lonely station, a handful of sleepless people had begun, at last, to understand what the traffic was saying. The war everyone watched happened out in the black, where drones burned and capital ships came apart. This quieter war happened in the space between the shots, in the traffic itself. A machine army cannot improvise on its own. To make 1,000 ships and 100,000 drones move as a single will, the Imperium had to broadcast instruction without pause, coded and endless, humming across the whole southern reach. That relentless coordination was its great strength. It was also a mouth that never closed. The station carried a designation instead of a name, and a position no chart advertised. It hung far from any fleet, past the last inhabited world, where the dark was quiet enough to hear. Its great dish arrays had one duty: to hold still and listen, sweeping the enemy's coded traffic out of the void and feeding it down into the rooms below. For a long while it had gathered signal without end. For a long while all of it had been noise. That was the wall the Union kept breaking itself against. The Vharen enciphered everything, wrapping each order in a shell of mathematics that turned plain intent into a smear of gibberish. A staff of humans might slip, might grow careless under strain, and hand a codebreaker the loose thread he needed. The machine did no such thing. It ran the same cipher, the same flawless way 10,000 times a day. And month after month, that perfection kept the wall sealed. The rooms below belonged to Analyst-Commander Locke. She had come to the station lean and sharp, and had gone gaunt in its dim light, sleeping in a cot behind the consoles when she slept at all, wearing the same worn duty coat for days on end. Her staff thought her half mad, and she let them. She had spent every month of the war learning to think the way the enemy's cipher thought, until she could feel the shape of its logic behind the noise. To break a machine, she liked to say, first you learn to dream in its language. Her method turned the enemy's greatest virtue into a wound. Perfection repeats. A thing that always does the exact correct action does the same action again and again, and repetition is the oldest gift a cipher can give the one trying to read it. Where a human sender varied, hesitated, improvised, the machine marched in step with itself. Every identical habit it could not break was a crack Locke could set a blade to. The idea underneath her work had a name and an author. Halvard, the converted diadem lord who now rode with the fleet, had argued it for months to rooms that humored him and did nothing. A will that answers every question with its one correct answer, he said, is a will you can predict. And a thing you can predict, you can eventually read. Out with the fleet, it was still theory. Down in Locke's rooms, it was becoming a key. The break, when it came, began with a courtesy the machine paid itself. Every Vharen order opened the same way, a formal preamble of address and timestamp and priority, framed in the identical structure every time. A human staff would have shortened it or grown careless with it over the months. The machine printed the whole ritual perfectly into each message. Because Locke knew roughly what those opening words had to carry, each preamble laid a stretch of known plaintext against its cipher. It was a crib, the foothold she had waited a war to find. On the great display in the analysis pit, the enemy's traffic stopped being a wall of noise and began to show a lattice. Columns of the cipher aligned. A repeated group here answered a repeated group there. Slowly, painfully, structure rose out of the murk, a hidden constellation surfacing once you knew which points to join. Each solved column gave up the next, and the next, the whole edifice leaning toward the hour it would fall open. It was a junior analyst named Rune who found the thread that unraveled it. Young, raw, 3 months out of training, he had been set the tedious work of tallying how often each cipher group recurred. Late in a watch everyone else had given up on, he caught one short group surfacing again and again ahead of a particular class of message, always in the same position. He almost let it go. Then he carried it, half apologizing to Locke, and she went very still. What followed was the least dramatic victory of the war. Weeks of it. Cross-checking one guess against 10,000 messages, chasing a solution until it collapsed, starting again on 3 hours of sleep. The station listened and the pit ground on, and out in the black the shooting war drove toward its crisis with no idea this room existed. The wall did not break all at once. It thinned and thinned until the light began to come through. Then one watch it gave. A single confirmed group cracked a column, that column cracked the next, and the cipher came apart from the inside in a cascade nobody in the pit would ever forget. Plain words rose out of the enemy's private voice, cold and complete. Locke read the first full decrypt standing up, one hand flat on the console, and felt the floor of the war shift under her. They could hear the machine now, every order it whispered to itself, they could read. After that, the decrypts came thick and fast, deployment schedules, movement orders. The dry administrative blood of a war machine, all of it legible now. The strangeness of it was hard to shake. The Union had stopped guessing at the enemy's intent from the outside. It was reading over the Imperium's shoulder, watching it tell its own ships exactly where to go, hours before a single one of them moved. And the machine was saying a great deal. Through the traffic, again and again, ran the signature of something being assembled, a concentration of force larger than anything the enemy had massed since the war began. Orders flowed to tender groups and escort lines scattered across the reach, all of them bending toward one rendezvous at one appointed hour, converging on a single objective named only by a code designator that recurred like a struck bell. Everything turned on that designator. It marked the place the hammer would fall, and the machine used it in message after message with perfect confidence, certain the shell of its cipher kept the name secret. Locke's people could see the word. What they could not yet prove was the world it pointed to. A designator is only a label. They had to nail it to a point on the chart and be certain, because a fleet sent to the wrong place would be a fleet thrown away. So they set a small, elegant trap of their own. They arranged for a particular Union outpost to send a specific message in the clear, an ordinary report the enemy was sure to intercept and pass along. Then they waited to see how the machine would speak of it. Hours later, the designator they were hunting appeared in the enemy's traffic, wrapped around the exact detail they had planted. The machine, doing the predictable correct thing, had answered the question for them. The target had a name now, and its name was Kestrel. Laid out on the pit's great display, the shape of it stopped every heart in the room. The whole weight of the Imperium's southern strength was gathering in the dark beyond Kestrel, tender after tender, and their escorts sliding into a formation of murderous geometry, engines banked and guns run out, an armada certain it was assembling in perfect secret. Weeks from now it would sail, and a quiet room at the edge of the calm had just watched it load the gun it meant to fire and read the label on the shell. There was a terrible grandeur to it on the display, a fleet built to end a campaign in one stroke, moving with the flawless certainty that had broken every human line for 4 months. It had good reason for that certainty. In the whole history of the war, it had never once been caught unready. It had always known more, moved faster, struck first, and it saw no reason this time would run otherwise. The irony was total, and Halvard savored it when the word reached him. The very thing that made the enemy invincible had undone it. To fight as one perfect machine, the Imperium had to coordinate without pause, and to coordinate it had to speak. And because it was perfect, it always spoke the same exact way. Its flawlessness was a clock, and a clock can be read. The strength that had beaten a dozen fleets was the strength that laid its plan on a Union table. For the first time in the war, the Union would know where the blow was aimed before it was thrown. Not guess. No. Every other battle had been a scramble to react to a machine that always moved first. This one, the Union could reach ahead of. The enemy would arrive at Kestrel expecting an empty road and easy prey, and the road would already have been chosen by the side it believed it had blinded. It was a strange kind of triumph, won by people who would never see the battle they had decided. There were maybe 40 of them in that station, unshaven and hollow-eyed, who would earn no medals the public could ever be told of. They had fired a single shot in the whole war, and it was this. They had listened long enough and thought hard enough to lift the enemy's plan straight out of its own mouth. The quiet room had beaten the fleet before the fleet arrived. Locke signed the assessment herself, standing at her console in the low light. She had lived half the war for a page like this, and now that it lay finished under her hand, she felt something colder than joy. She knew exactly what the paper was worth and exactly what it would cost. Somewhere weeks ahead, good people would take this handful of decrypts out into the dark and build a killing ground out of them. She had handed the fleet a knife. It was for others to decide where it went in. The assessment left the station as a tight, coded burst, flung inward across the reach toward a fleet command that had spent months learning to trust the quiet room. It carried the place, the strength and the timing of the enemy's great stroke, laid out with a confidence no intelligence in this war had ever managed. Behind it, the antenna fans swung back to the dark and kept listening, because the machine was still talking, and every hour it talked, it gave a little more of itself away. With the word in hand, a trap became possible for the first time. If the Union moved carefully and kept its own secret, as well as it had cracked the enemy's, it could gather its outnumbered strength at Kestrel and lie waiting in the dark. The machine would drive in exactly on schedule, exactly on its chosen course, certain of surprise, and find the surprise already sprung and aimed the other way. That was the shape of the thing the listening post had made. Out beyond Kestrel, the great Crimson Armada finished gathering, flawless and confident and utterly unaware, running the plan its own cipher had already surrendered. It would sail believing it hunted a blind and beaten enemy. It would arrive to find that enemy waiting, forewarned, dug into the dark with the plan in its pocket. The hammer was raised. The Union already knew where it would fall, so the invisible war handed its gift to the loud one and stepped back into silence. Kestrel waited ahead, a lonely waypoint that would soon hold the fate of the whole South. The fleets would meet there and settle the war in fire, and the histories would remember the ships and the admirals and the burning. They would rarely remember a nameless station at the edge of the calm or a gaunt woman signing a page who bent the whole battle before the fleets ever met. The trap was set. All that remained was to spring it.